We'll begin with a slip knot. Chain a length of chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now that you've got your length of chains, by holding the two ends together, this length of chains must be able to fit over your head and sit comfortably around your neckline. Then you count the number of stitches that you have worked. In my case, I've worked 70 stitches. Now I need this chain, the multiple of this chain, to be in multiples of 4. For me, the next multiple of 4 is 72. So I'll work those 2 extra chains, 1, 2, to bring in my chain count to a multiple of 4. Okay, so that's the steps in order to work this foundation chain. You'll first work a length of chains and then hold it together, the two ends together, fit it over your head and make sure that it fits over and sits comfortably around the neckline. Then you'll count the number of chains and you'll bring it up to a multiple of 4. Even though I have the 72 chains, this is just giving you an idea. We are all of different types and sizes, so your chain may not be the same. You'll work according to your own measurements. Generally, the 72 chains I'm working at for a size small. So just to give you a rough idea. But you work whatever number of chains you need in order for it to be a comfortable fit over the head and around the neckline. And then obviously you'll bring it up to a multiple of 4, which is important to work the stitch pattern. Now that I have my chain count correct, which is in multiples of 4, I'll join the two ends together, making certain that this entire chain is not twisted. So to join into that first chain, right, round 1, chain 3. So for round 1, we're working double crochets all across this chain, and our chain 3 counts as a stitch, a double crochet. To work a double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and you'll continue with double crochets to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 1. So to complete the round, we need to slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. So to do that, into that 3rd chain, it's a slip stitch. Round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So for round 2, we're working it on the right side. So here, round 2, we'll be working front post double crochets alternating with back post double crochets. And to work a front post double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into the post, and this is the post of the stitch, going from the front. So here it is, going from the front, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And that was a front post double crochet. And then it's a back post double crochet into the next stitch. So it's yarn over, insert the hook into the post of the stitch going from behind. So here's it from behind. Pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. That was a back post double crochet. So for this round, we'll alternate between the 2 stitches, a front post double crochet and a back post double crochet. And you'll continue with that stitch pattern to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 2, and so to end the round, it's into the 3rd chain from chain 3, slip stitch to join. Round 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So for round 3, we're working round 3 on the wrong side. Then it's double crochet, and sorry, this chain 3 counts as a stitch, in this case a double crochet. So into the next 3 stitches, we'll work a double crochet each. So that was 1, 2, 3. So including that chain 3, I have 4 double crochets, and then it's a chain 1, and without skipping a stitch, into that same next stitch, I'll work a double crochet, and then it's 3 more double crochets into the next 3 stitches. 1, sorry, that was 2, 3, and 4. So here it is, 4 double crochets into 4 stitches, then a chain 1, and then again 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches, chain 1, 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches, chain 1, and so on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 3. So to end the round, I've worked the double crochet into the last stitch, then it's chain 1, and I'll slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. Round 4, so here I'm going to turn to the right side. So we're working round 4 on the right side, and into that chain 1 space, I'll slip stitch to get into that chain 1 space. Then I've got to work puff stitches into the chain 1 spaces. So to work that first puff stitch, I'll pull up on that loop. I'll pull it up to about 1 centimeter, and then it's yarn over, insert the hook into that same space, pull up a loop, and elongate the loop. That was 2 loops, then my 3rd one, the same way, and my 4th. And then it's yarn over, pull the loop, pull the yarn through all the loops, and then it's a chain 1 to secure your puff stitch. Now that's a completed puff stitch. And then I've got 4 double crochets before my next chain 1 space. So into those 4 double crochets, I'll work back post triple crochets. So to work a back post triple crochet, it's yarn over twice, insert the hook into the post of the stitch going from behind, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So again, yarn over twice, insert the hook into that next post of the stitch going from behind, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Again, yarn over twice, insert the hook into that post going from behind, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops, yarn over, go through 2 loops, and yarn over, go through 2 loops. And I'll do that one more time into the 4th double crochet. So I've worked 4 back post triple crochets. Into that chain 1 space, I'll work a puff stitch. To work a puff stitch again, it's yarn over, insert the hook into that chain 1 space, pull up a loop, and elongate the loop to about 1 centimeter. Then again, yarn over, insert the hook into that chain 1 space, pull up a loop and elongate the loop. That was my second one, and for my third, doing the same, and one more time. So the puff stitch, you've got to do this 4 times to complete the puff stitch. Then it's yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. And to secure the puff stitch, it's a chain 1. So that's a completed puff stitch. So my stitch pattern is into the next 4 double crochets, I'll work 4 back post triple crochets, and it's a puff stitch into the chain 1 space, and you'll continue with that stitch pattern to the end of the round. So just to let you know that we're working on the right side. So always when you're doing a round 4 repeat, it's always on the right side, and then your round 5 will be on the wrong side, your round 6 will be on the right side. I'm at the end of round 4, and I've worked the puff stitch and my 4 back post triple crochets. So to end the round, into that stitch above the puff stitch. Now I must explain, so I need to get closer to the camera. The puff stitch is very confusing because it will actually look like there's 2 stitches here. But you're going to ignore that first stitch because it's not really a stitch. It just brings the puff together. That chain 1 that we work to close up on the puff stitch, that's our stitch. So into that stitch, if you look here, if you look closely, from the top, it does look like it's a stitch, but it isn't really. So here, into the next one, and it's right above the puff stitch. I'll slip stitch to join. Round 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So here we're working double crochets all across. So you're working double crochets into those back post triple crochets from the previous round, and a double crochet into the top of the puff stitch. Again, be very careful, because if you look closely again, that stitch isn't really a stitch. It's actually this one that's the stitch. So it's very confusing. If you are confused by that, I'd say skip the one that's directly above the puff stitch and work your stitch into the next one, or rather count the number of stitches. So you know you need to work 4 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 for the puff stitch, and then 4 again. So you'll know exactly where to work those stitches. So here we go. That's my first double crochet, and the second, that's my third, the fourth, and here I'm at the puff stitch, so I'm going to skip that one that looks like a stitch and which really isn't. It's very deceiving. I hope you can see it clearly. And into that next stitch I'll work my double crochet. So even when you're counting your stitches for this round, you'll see that when we get to the end of the yoke, sometimes you may end your yoke off on this round, on the round 3 repeat. So I'd advise you not to count the stitches from above, because that just makes it confusing. It really does look like a stitch, but it's not. It brought the whole puff stitch together, but in actual fact it's our chain 1 that sort of fastened the puff stitch together. That's the stitch. So when you do count this round, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's my puff stitch 5. I'd rather count it on the post than at the top of the stitch. This round is quite confusing, especially when you have to count the stitches. So just be careful of that. You don't want to work those extra stitches and then you've got a yoke that grows too big. Okay, so again, you'll repeat that pattern sequence with your double crochets into those back post triple crochets and a double crochet into the puff stitch to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 5, and to end the round, it's slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. Round 6, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So round 6, we've got to, well, actually before working round 6, I now need to count the number of stitches that I have for round 5. In my case, I have 90 stitches, and you'll have as many as you have. So count the number of stitches. I've got 90, and I need to bring my next round up to a multiple of 4. And the next multiple of 4 is 92 stitches. So in order to do that, I've got to work 2 increases in my next round. I'd rather increase than decrease, because we need our yoke to grow as we're working. So when working those increases, depending on how many increases you need to work to bring up your stitch count to a multiple of 4, I choose to work the increases. Like in my case, I've got 2 increases. So I'll work 1 increase on this side of the start and another increase on the other side of the start. And should you have 3 increases to work, I wouldn't work 2 increases on here and 1 increase there. I'd rather work my 1 increase here, 1 increase on the other side of start, and then on the opposite side I'll work an increase. So it's spaced out evenly. It's not going to create a bigger back on one side or make your starting line go askew or anything. Space your increases out evenly. So here goes. For my first increase, well, an increase is working 2 stitches into 1. So for my first increase, it's a double crochet into that first stitch after start and a double crochet into that same stitch. So I've worked 2 stitches into 1. And then I'll continue with double crochets to my last stitch where I'll work another increase. Before I go on any further, I didn't explain what to do if you've got just one increase. So if you've got one increase to work, I wouldn't work it here on either side of the start. I'd work it on the opposite side of the start. I'll just work the one increase there. Remember, round 6 will always be the round for the yoke where you work your increases in order to get your stitch count to a multiple of 4. So that's the round where you make the adjustment in your stitch count. I'm at the end of round 6, and all I need to do right at the end, so I need to work another increase in order to get my stitch count. So here goes. For an increase again, it's 2 stitches worked into 1. And then it's slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. I've completed the yoke, and all I've done was repeat round 3, round 4, round 5, and round 6 until the yoke measures my armhole depth. Basically, it's the armhole depth for the size that you're making. So I know that I'm making the sweater to fit a size small, and the armhole depth for a size small is 17.5 centimeters. I will provide those measurements in the next clip. Basically, your armhole depth is the measurement from your shoulder to your underarm. And that's just to make certain that your sweater fits comfortably. So that's 17.5 centimeters. And now I know once I get my armhole depth, I know I can move on to the body. But before we do that, we need to separate this yoke into the front body, back body, and armhole spaces on either side. So to separate the armhole spaces from the front body and back body, unfortunately, there is a calculation to be done, but it's a really easy one. So here goes. I've just written down a little bit here. The first thing that you need to do is count your number of stitches for the last round that you've worked. So in my case, I have 185 stitches. Now you will definitely not have the same because your foundation chain right at the start was a different number, and you may be working a different size. Whatever it may be, you take the number that you've counted. Like I said, in my case, I have 185. Now you take that number and you'll divide it by 4. 185 divided by 4 is 46, and I get a remainder of 1. And that's fine, I'll leave it aside. So the next thing to do is you'll take 1/4 of that answer that you've gotten and divide that by 2. So that 46, I'll divide it by 2, and I have 23. Now the reason for doing that is because when we're working in the round, the start is actually at half the back. So on either side of the start, we've got half the back and half the back, and that completes a full back. Sorry, I'm just out of view. So here it is. There's the start and half the back and half the back. So if we look at it from the start, I'll count my 23 stitches and I'll mark it off with a stitch marker, and on the other side I'll count 23 stitches and mark it off with a stitch marker. And with those, the full back from stitch marker to stitch marker, I have my 46 stitches. So that's the 1/4 of that measurement. And then I'm going to further count on the other side from the stitch marker all around, and I'll count 46 stitches, mark it off with the stitch marker, and on the other side of that stitch marker, I'll count my 46 stitches and mark it off with a stitch marker. So I've got my back body my armhole spaces on either side, and now I have my front body, and my front body should equal the 46 stitches plus the remainders that I have. So even if you've got a remainder here for your second measurement, that's fine. You just add it on. It will be added onto the front body. So in my case, like I said, I've got 23 for the back, so giving me 46, and then it's 46 for the armhole spaces, and I've got that 46 plus I had that remainder of 1. So you work out your you'll separate your yoke as I've done here, working out the measurements from the total number of stitches that you have in the last round. So now that we've got our 4 stitch markers in place and we've divided the yoke in 4, there's just one more adjustment to be made before moving on to the body. So each of these stitch markers, what I'll do is I'll move them 3 stitches towards the armhole space. So if I look at the stitch marker here, and 1, 2, 3. So I'll just move that, and I'll explain to you why I'm doing that. The next stitch marker, I'll move it towards the armhole space. 1, 2, 3. And on the other side, I'll do the same. 1, 2, 3. And here as well, 1, 2, 3. Just remember that we're moving these stitch markers towards the armhole spaces. Now what's going to happen in the next round is that I'm going to chain 3 under the armholes. So that will accommodate for the 3 stitches. I just want to increase the, make the body slightly looser, and well, my armholes a little bit tighter, but even so it wouldn't be tight because as I said, we'll be working that chain 3 under the armholes. Round 1 of the body, chain 3, turn, double crochet to the first stitch marker. I've double crocheted to the first stitch marker, and I've worked the double crochet into that stitch marked by the first stitch marker. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll skip the stitches in between the first and second stitch marker, and I'll join to the second stitch marker with a double crochet into that stitch marked by the second stitch marker. Then it's double crochets to the third stitch marker. We formed our first armhole space. I've double crocheted to the third stitch marker, and I've worked that double crochet into the stitch marked by the third stitch marker. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll join to the fourth stitch marker, skipping the stitches in between. I'll join with a double crochet into that stitch marked by the fourth stitch marker. Then it's double crochets to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 1 of the body, and I've worked those double crochets and those chains under the armholes, and I've slip stitched to join. I've continued on with the body of the sweater. For round 2, I chain 3, work double crochets all across. I work double crochets into that chain 3s that I worked under the armhole as well, and then I slip stitched to join. I continued with chain 3, turn, double crochets all across and slip stitch to join until I reach the length that I wanted my sweater at. So you'll do the same. I then tapered off the bottom end of the sweater, or the edging of the sweater, by decreasing in that last round, and I continued on with the edging as you see here. This part of the sweater, I will show you how to do it when I'm working the sleeves, because you'll work it the same for the bottom of the sweater as well as to edge your sleeves. Moving on to the sleeves, I've got my yarn, and here at the underarm of the armhole space, I'll attach my yarn to the armhole space. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll work double crochets all around the armhole space. Continue to the end. At the end, you can slip stitch to join. I've continued on with the sleeve, working the sleeve to a 3/4 length. You can work a full sleeve should you wish. There's just a little tip here. So if you need your sleeve tapered off, what I would do is I'd work with my 5mm hook to maybe the elbow, and then I'd change to a 4mm hook, and right at the end I'd use a 3mm hook. So gradually drop down on the size of your hook if you want a tapered sleeve. Okay, so now we're working the edging, but before we do that, we need to decrease in our last round. So here goes chain 3. So we're working double crochets all across. The only difference is after every into every third double crochet, we'll work a decrease. So here's our first double crochet and our second, and now for our decrease. To work that decrease, it's yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And then again, it's 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, and the next 2 stitches we'll work a decrease. So we again yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and you'll continue with that stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've continued on. I've completed the sleeve edging. So for that last round where I worked those decreases, I slip stitch to join. Thereafter, as I had done at the neckline, where I had worked those front post double crochets alternating with back post double crochets, I did the same to complete that edging. And you'll work as many rounds as need be to get the width of edging you're looking for. Just remember that in your second round of working the front post double crochets alternating with the back post double crochets, remember to work a back post double crochet for every back post double crochet worked in the previous round. And you'll do the same with the front post double crochet, working the front post double crochet for every front post double crochet worked in the previous round. And that just will give you this pattern, like all front post double crochets together and all back post double crochets together. And yes, so you complete the same steps as you did for the sleeve, for the other sleeve as well. And all that's left to do is to weave in all these ends.